Hello friends, good afternoon and welcome to EduSat Live Lectures. Dear friends, today in biotechnology we will be talking about scope of biotechnology and life sciences. To discuss this topic we have with us our subject expert Dr. Amit Bhattacharya. Dr. Bhattacharya is Assistant Professor in Department of Zoology in Ramjas College, University of Delhi. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Sir to our studios and request him to start the lecture.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So, in this part of the lecture, I will be covering upon the scope of biotechnology and life sciences. Before going into the scope and the future prospects of the biotechnology and life sciences, we'll discuss about what exactly we mean by biotechnology. So, in this lecture, I have divided this lecture in a number of parts. The first part I will cover up what exactly is a biotechnology. Subsequently, the emergence of biotechnology will be discussed. Thirdly, the important discoveries made in the field of biotechnology and life sciences, especially the discoveries which got Nobel Prizes. And then we will discuss the biological sciences field in India. And at the end, I will discuss about the various institutes and universities which offer various kinds of biotechnology related and life science related field of studies. So before going into the scopes of the thing, let's discuss what exactly biotechnology is. So biotechnology means it is an amalgamation of biology and technology. So two major fields have got amalgamated and it has got transformed into a new field of study which is known as the biology technology. Now this biotechnology consists of a number of subdivided studies. So it includes molecular biology, microbiology, biochemistry, immunology, genetics, chemical engineering, cell biology. So we can see so many diverse fields are funneling into this molecular biotechnology. So all these fields contribute to the studies of biotechnology, where we include the technology along with the theoretical and the knowledges of biology. Now, the molecular biology, from this biotechnology, we are getting benefits in the various fields of sciences, such as the crop sciences field, discovery of the drugs. So the various drug discoveries are taking place with the help of the biotechnology tools which are available. Then the vaccine developments are taking place. Then the various diagnostic or the detection kits which are in the market are because of the field or discoveries of the biotechnology. And finally, it is helping the cattle sciences improve the cattle breeds, their foods and everything. So this biotechnology fields is having immense impact on every sphere of life. Now in this part of the lecture, we will discuss about few of the very important discoveries or the topics which have contributed majorly to the development of this biotechnology field. So this topics include the electrophoresis, this discovery of the electrophoresis, the blotting techniques, then the restriction enzymes which plays a very important role in the recombinant DNA technology, then the antibody structure, subsequently the ELISA technique, which is the enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay, the DNA structure, DNA sequences, and a number of studies we will discuss, which is the Human Genome Project, which have revolutionized the way in which we look through to the human genomes, the fluorescent in situ hybridization, DNA microarray techniques, polymerase chain reaction, and DNA fingerprinting. So we'll discuss about all these things in briefly after some time. Now, if we go into the emergence of biotechnology, biotechnology term was first coined and used in the year 1917 by a Hungarian engineer. His name was Carl Regge. So he was the first one who discovered and used this term biotechnology. And according to him, biotechnology was defined as all lines of work by which products are produced from raw materials with the aid of living things. Subsequently, in the subsequent years, the term biotechnology came into existence and it became much more prevalent and used. In the year 1961, one of the journals, which were initially called as the Journal of Microbiology and Biochemical Engineering and Technology, was renamed into biotechnology and bioengineering. So at this time, the field of biotechnology came into existence, and subsequently after the discovery of number of techniques, they become a boom of biotechnology. Now, one of the first initial discoveries which was made in the year 1937, the work started in the 1937, and subsequently the scientists got a Nobel Prize in 1948. And this discovery was the discovery of the electrophoresis assembly. So this work was done by the Aaron Wellman, and for this work he was awarded the Nobel Prize in the year 1948 in the field of chemistry. So his research was majorly based on the research of the electrophoresis and absorption analysis. So subsequently we will see electrophoresis plays a very important role in identifying the specific DNA, RNA or protein segments in the agarose gel or the various gels. So it revolutionized the way in which we can analyze the DNA, RNA or the protein extracted from the samples. Now, if you see the image over here, this is the image which shows the gel electrophoresis. So the gel electrophoresis is one of the most commonly used technique nowadays in the field of life sciences and biotechnology. So in this one, a agarose gel is prepared onto which the sample which contains the mixture of DNA of various lengths or the sizes, or it may be RNA segments which may be there, or the proteins are loaded, and subsequently the electric charge field is switched on, and as depending upon their charges they move towards that pole. As the DNA is negatively charged, so it start moving towards the positively field, and as it moves towards the positively field, there is a segregation or the separation of the DNA fragments based on their molecular sizes or the different sizes. So based on the sizes they get separated on this gel, and subsequently we can find out the DNA fragment of our interest in that gel, and we can specifically locate and say yes, that particular band is present, and if it is not present we can say that that band is not present, so the sample doesn't contain that DNA fragment. So this particular gel electrophoresis also revolutionized the biotechnology field. Now, subsequently in the year 1953, another breakthrough research was done, and in the year 1962, the scientists got the Nobel Prize. So this was the discovery of the molecular structure of DNA or the deoxyribonucleic acid. So this was one of the biggest discoveries which was made, and for this work Francis Crick, James Watson and Maurice Wilkins were awarded the Nobel Prize. So all of three of them shared the Nobel Prize in the year 1962, which was awarded in the field of physiology and medicine. So the discovery of nucleic acid, the deoxyribonucleic acid, the double helix structure subsequently came into the picture, and that became a very important discovery in the field of biotechnology and life sciences. Now, in the year 1959, another set of scientists started working on the antibodies. So antibodies plays a very important role in our body immune system. So we know that antibodies are an essential part of the immune system mechanism. So for this particular discovery, Gerald Altman and Rodney Porter were awarded the Nobel Prize in the year 1972 in the field of physiology or medicine. So this discovery basically discovered the chemical structure of the antibodies. So antibodies plays a very important role nowadays in the various ELISA techniques or the detection techniques for the HIV, hepatitis or the various pregnancy kits also uses these antibody based detection techniques. So they have revolutionized the basic techniques of discovery and the detection methods. Now, in the year 1970, another set of scientists, they started working on the restriction enzymes. So the restriction enzymes came into the picture. So restriction enzymes are nothing but the enzymes which cleave the DNA at specific sites or locations. So they read the specific nucleotide bases at the specific site and cut the DNA at those specific sites only. So the restriction internucleases plays a very important role in the recombinant biotechnology. And for this novel work in the year 1978, the scientists were awarded the Nobel Prizes. So Werner Albert, Daniel Nathans and Wilton Smith, they were awarded the Nobel Prize in the year 1978 in the field of physiology or medicine for the discovery of these restriction endonucleases and their applications, especially in the molecular genetics and biotechnology. So this was another one of the major discovery of biotechnology field. Now, what exactly these restriction endonucleases are? So restriction endonucleases are nothing but the enzymes which are present in the bacterial system. So as we know, the bacterial system or the prokaryotic system don't have the immune system which we have. So the immune systems are absent. So just to kill the foreign particles or the foreign DNA or the any proteins which are coming into their body circulation, they require some kind of enzyme. So restriction endonucleases are nothing but these specifically recognizes these foreign DNA, and they recognizes the specific sites within this foreign DNA and chops these DNA segments. So the restriction endonucleases produces two types of cleavage ends. One is called as the staggered end or the sticky ends which are produced. The other one are called as the blunt end, where it cuts from the blunt sides. So there are sticky ends which are produced and there are blunt ends which are produced. So in total there are about 3,700 or more than 3,700 type 2 restriction endonucleases which are present or which have been discovered from various bacteria, and they recognizes about 250 different recognition sites within the DNA. So we can just think that how much diverse these restriction endonuclease can cut the DNA. So they are one of the major tools which will be used or which are used in the recombinant biotechnology. Now this picture shows some of the very important restriction endonucleases which with their restriction sites. So there are various types of, as we discussed, there are 3,000 more than 3,700 restriction endonucleases, type 2 restriction. These are some of the most commonly used restriction endonucleases like EcoR1, which have got a restriction sites and produces a staggered cleavage pattern. Then there is HINT3, then BAMH1, SOU3A, then HE3, which produces a blunt end. So we can see various restriction endonucleases which produces the sticky ends and some of the restriction endonucleases which are producing the blunt ends. Now these restriction endonucleases played a very important role in the analysis. Just taking as account of a small example over here, the example which is I am taking over here is the sickle cell anemia. So in the sickle cell anemia there is a point mutation which takes place in the beta globin or the hemoglobin J. So in normal beta globin allele, which is shown in blue in color, it has got two restriction sites. So there are two restriction sites which are produced. So if this gene is cut by the restriction endonucleases, we will get three bands which is shown in the normal allele. So there will be three bands which will be produced. But in the sickle cell mutant beta globin allele, there is a point mutation which takes place in one of the restriction endonuclease sites. So there is only one restriction endonuclease site which remains. So in a patient who is suffering from the sickle cell allele, he will be showing only two fragments, because one of the restriction endonuclease bands has been deleted or removed from that particular location. So if we subject these bands which are extracted and subject them to gel electrophoresis, it results in 3 bands for normal alleles and 2 bands for the sickle cell allele. So we can see from the use of these restriction endonucleases, we can easily identify a normal allele and a sickle cell allele. So this is the use of these biotechnology tools. Now another technique which came into the picture in the year 1971 was called as the enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. So this is called in a short as ELISA. So this ELISA technique revolutionized the field of biotechnology by the discovery of various detection and diagnostic tools. So one of the major diagnostic tools which is based on these ELISA kits is the HIV detection kits. So this technique was discovered by two of the scientists, Peter Perlman and the Eva Everell in the Stockholm University. So they invented the ELISA technique. So this technique basically tests for the disease and the check for the antibodies in those particular patients. So we will see how this ELISA technique or the enzyme linked immunosorbent assay function or works. Now, if we see over here, the two ELISAs are shown. The first ELISA technique is called as the indirect ELISA, in which there is a detection of presence of serum antibodies against human immunodeficiency virus, which is the causative agents for AIDS. So this indirect ELISA is used for the detection or the presence of serum antibodies specifically which are produced against the HIV viruses. So what happens is, in this technique there is an antigen coated well. Into this antigen coated well the patient's serum is incorporated. So as the patient's serum is incorporated, what happens is, if the patient is suffering or having HIV viruses in his blood circulation, there will be antibodies which will be produced against this HIV virus. So the antibodies are detected. So these antibodies present in the serum will go and bind to the antigen coated wells. So subsequently we add a enzyme conjugated secondary antibody onto it. So there is an enzyme which is loaded onto the secondary antibody, and what this enzyme does is, this enzyme converts the colorless substrate into colored product. So there will be a colored product which will be shown over there, and if we take the chemiluminescence absorption of that particular colored product, we can easily identify that yes, our test well is showing color. That means the person is producing the antibodies against the HIV virus, or the person is infected with the human immunodeficiency virus. And if the color is not there, we can confirm that yes, the patient is not suffering or not infected with the HIV virus, and he is not suffering from the AIDS condition. If we take the second example of the use of ELISA, the second example is called as the sandwich ELISA. So the sandwich ELISA came into the picture, and one of the most important sandwich ELISA uses is the use in the detection of the malaria in the patient. So the malaria, we know that the patient who suffers from malaria, there is a formation or the replications of parasites takes place within his body. So as the parasites grows in the red blood cells, there are different cycles like the ring stages, trophozoite stage and the schizoid stages, and subsequently the erythrocytic cycle takes place. So along with this erythrocytic or the liver schizogony stages, the parasite produces large number of proteins within the body circulation. So these proteins, for example, are called as the HRP protein or histidine rich protein. So they are also released along with the division or the multiplication process of the parasites. Now what happens is, in this ELISA technique, this technique contains contains the antibody coated layer. So there is an antibody coated layer which is there, and this antibody is specifically against the malaria antigen. So then the patient's serum samples or the blood samples are taken if the patient is suffering from the malaria cases. So what will happen, there will be a large number of malaria antigens such as the HRP proteins which will be there in its blood circulation, and when the serum is loaded onto the well, as this contains the malaria antigens, this will go and bind to these antibodies which are specifically against them. Then subsequently the washing is done and a secondary antibody is loaded onto it. So the secondary antibody now contains an enzyme. So this enzyme, what it does is, again it converts the colorless product, a colorless substrate into colored product. So there will be a light emitted which will be taking place over there, and if we can quantify that thing, we can easily say that yes, the patient is suffering from malaria infection, and what is the number or the quantity of these malaria antigens present in his blood circulation. So these ELISA technique played a very important role in the discovery of these tests. So over there I have shown only two of the uses in the case of the AIDS and malaria, but the use have been increasing over the years. Now we come into the one of the major discoveries which took place in the biotechnology. It was the discovery or the emergence of the recombinant biotechnology or the DNA technology. So this took place majorly in the year of 1973. So two of the scientists, Herbert Boyer from the University of California and another scientist, Cohen, who was working in the Stanford University, they were instrumental in the discovery of the recombinant DNA technology. So Cohen was working some of the methods to transfer the plasmids, which are nothing but the small circular DNA molecules, into the bacterial system, while Boyer was working in his lab in University of California on enzymes that cut the DNA at specific nucleotide sequences. So two of the scientists who were working on very diverse field, they collaborated with each other and they came up with a technology which was named as recombinant DNA technology. So in this recombinant DNA technology, what they thought is the Boyer's enzyme could be used to splice a specific segment of DNA into plasmid, and then the recombinant plasmid could be introduced into a bacterial system which acts as the host system using the Cohen's method. So both these techniques were used. Now let's discuss what exactly the recombinant DNA technology means. So suppose we have got a target DNA. The target DNA can synthesize various hormones or any of important proteins which are missing from the humans, which a particular patient doesn't produces or is deficient of. So the target DNA is cleaved from the total source of DNA with the help of the restriction endonucleases, and similarly the cloning vector, which is nothing but the circular DNA or the plasmid DNA, it is also enzymatically cut with the help of the restriction endonucleases. Now the target DNA is joined to the cloning vector with the help of the various enzymes and the DNA construct is produced. So now this DNA is called as the recombinant plasmid DNA because it contains the target or the foreign DNA into this plasmid DNA. Now this DNA, recombinant DNA, is then transferred or translocated or introduced into the host system. So the cells are isolated, like over here the bacterial cells are being shown. So the bacterial cells are being isolated and these host cell, into these host cell the recombinant DNA is incorporated. Now subsequently these recombinant DNA uses the machineries of the host cells producing the proteins which these genes code or the target genes code. So the protein encoded by the cloned genes are produced within that particular host cell. So this is how the various proteins can be synthesized by using a bacterial system or a foreign system. So the plasmid cloning vector is also shown over here. So the plasmid cloning vector into which the target DNA was incorporated, it contains a origin of replication. Then there is ampicillin resistant gene which is there, and there is a restriction endonuclease sites which are present over here, and these are the site into which the target DNA is incorporated. Now for this major work by Boyer and Cohen, in the year 1976, another scientist, Swanson, played a very important role in the discovery, and this became a very important or marked discovery in the field of biotechnology. So it was highlighted across the globe, and this came into a picture when the discovery or the production of insulin took place. So the human insulin was produced by the use of recombinant DNA technology. So we can just understand how important this recombinant DNA technology or these biotechnology techniques were. So the human insulin was produced, which the diabetic patients regularly take. So these human insulins are produced with the help of the recombinant DNA technology. So if we see the image over here, in this human insulin gene, what it is being done. So a human insulins are produced by certain cells which are called as the pancreatic cell or the beta cells which are producing the human insulin. So the genes which produce the human insulins are taken from the human cells. They are incorporated into the cloning vector with the help of the restriction endonucleases and various systems, and then this recombinant DNA, which contains the human insulin gene as well as the cloning vector, is transferred into a yeast cell or a host cell or the bacterial cell. So the plasmid is reintroduced into a bacterial system, and now this plasmid, what it does is it contains the target gene. This target gene then subsequently transcribe and translate the proteins, which is the human insulin, taking the help of the host cell machinery. So all the enzymes which are present in the host cells help in the production of the proteins from this target cell. So over here the protein is the human insulin. So these human insulins are produced in these bacterial systems, and these are done in a large number, especially in the fermenters these things are done. So a large amount of these human insulins are produced, which are subsequently taken out from these bacterial system, purified, processed, and then packaged into the proper quantities, and then they are marketed into the market. So these are the human insulins which regularly these diabetic patients who are recommended with these human insulin injections takes. So this is one of the very important discoveries in the field of biotechnology. Now, another few of the various important discoveries took place between the year 1971 to 1981. These were called as the blotting techniques. So these blotting techniques are specifically for the detection of specific DNA, specific RNA, or specific protein fragments. So these blotting techniques played a very important role to detect specific sequence among DNA fragments, or it may be RNA fragment, or it may be a protein, with the help of the electrophoresis. So in the starting we discuss about the electrophoresis. So we can see over here the electrophoresis plays a very important role in the discovery of these blotting techniques. So the technique to detect the specific DNA fragments was known as the Surdon blotting technique, named after this scientist. The technique which detects specific RNA segments is called as the northern blotting, and specific proteins are identified with another blotting technique which is called as the western blotting technique. Now, if we see how exactly these blotting techniques are done, so there is a agarose gel, and there is a gel electrophoresis assembly which is there, and onto the wells the DNA, RNA, or the protein samples are loaded. Then after the loading, the power supply is switched on. So based upon their charges and sizes, they diffuse down across the gel, and based on their molecular sizes, they differentiate and divide in the get separated in the band. Subsequently, these bands are transferred onto nitrocellulose membrane with the help of the blotting techniques which are shown over here, and these membranes are then detected with the help of the specific probes whether the specific DNA fragment or RNA fragment or protein fragment is present within them or not, with the help of the various radioactive or the fluorescent label probes also. Now, another very important discovery which was done, it was done in the year 1977, and this discovery was done in the field of DNA sequencing. So this sequencing plays a very important role in estimating the DNA and specifically knowing what exactly the DNA is. So with this, I come to the end of my lecture over here. We will discuss in details the rest of the part in the second part of this lecture. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, dear viewers. This is the lecture which is in continuation with some other lectures based on the scope of biotechnology and life sciences. So, in the previous lecture we discussed about some of the major discovery. In this lecture also we will discuss some of the discovery and then go into what are the various scope and prospects of biotechnology in India. So, another major discovery which took place in the field of biotechnology was in the year 1977, and this discovery was the DNA sequencing. So the DNA sequencing plays a very important role just to know how these DNA sequences are, what are the DNA sequences, and if we know the DNA sequences, we can easily characterize and check it between a patient, normal person, and a patient who suffers from some chronic or acute diseases. So we can just quantify the DNA sequences and tell that yes, there is certain changes or subtle changes in the DNA sequences, and this may be contributing to the DNA changes or the mutations in the patient condition. So for the work in 1980, the Nobel Prize was awarded in chemistry to few of the scientists, the Gilbert, Sanger and Burke. These prizes were specially given for the contribution concerning the determination of base sequences in nucleic acid. So Gilbert and Sanger played a very important role in the discovery of the sequencing of DNA. So the DNA sequencing, the first method which was discovered or published in the year 1977 was by Maxam and Gilbert. The other subsequent method, which is called as the chain termination method or dideoxy method, this method was discovered by Sanger and his colleagues. Now, this method is specifically based on the DNA replication concept. So the DNA replication concept was used in this method, and in this we know that in the DNA replication, each of the bases comes and they binds to the leading strand. So with the help of the phosphates and the 3' OH, this strand elongation takes place. So over here we can see how the DNA replication is taking place with the help of the animation. So the complementary bases are coming over here. With the help of the phosphodiester bonds, the backbone is made. So thus the DNA sequencing methods use this DNA replication concept. Now, what happened is in this DNA replication concept, what the scientists used differently is, if they thought that if they can use instead of deoxyribonucleic acid, if they can use dideoxyribonucleic acid. So in a normal nucleic acid, we can see the 3' OH is present and the 2' hydrogen is present. But what the scientists did is they produced certain nucleotide bases which were called as the dideoxynucleotide. So both the 3' and the 2' OH were removed and it was called as the H. So there is no OH present at the 3' OH region. So if we see the DNA replication concept over here, the phosphate is forming a band or a bond with the 3' OH of the already existing nucleotide base. So if the 3' OH is not present, there won't be any phosphodiester bond formed, and at that particular point the chain termination will take place. So that's why the name came in chain termination method. So if we see the method over here, the DNA template is used, the primers are added, and there are four different tubes in which the reaction takes place. So in the first tube, the scientist added dideoxy ATP. In the second tube, there was addition of dideoxy GTP. In the third tube, there was addition of dideoxy CTP, and in the fourth tube, there was addition of dideoxy TTP. So all these different dideoxy were added in 4 different tubes, and accordingly what happened is there was chain termination which was taking place whenever there was an addition of dideoxy nucleotide. So we can see that these dideoxy, whenever they were incorporated, the reaction could not proceed further because these were dideoxy. There was no presence of 3' OH in this dideoxy nucleotide, and the chain got terminated. So these terminated fragments were run onto the gel, and by running this gel and knowing the sequence of this particular fragment, we can easily leave out what is the DNA sequence which is produced. Now this particular biotechnology field also revolutionized the thing when another technique came into picture, which was called as the DNA fingerprinting. So this DNA fingerprinting technique was discovered in the year 1984. One of the British scientists, his name was Alec Jeffreys. So he noticed that there were existence of certain sequences of DNA which were called as the mini satellite or variable number tandem repeat that do not contribute to the function of a gene, but they are repeated a number of times within the gene and in other genes of the DNA sample. So there were certain fragments which were found repeated in these genes. They do not contribute to the functioning of the genes, but they were present in a number of sequences. Now all these numbers varied between each of the individuals. So that became one of the fundamental keystones in the discovery of this method. So if we see the image over here, this is the image which shows a particular fragment of gene. So in this particular fragment of gene, if we see between 2 restriction sites, there are certain VNTR regions which are present. So these VNTRs are basically called as the variable number tandem repeat. So they are polymorphic, which means that they have many forms. Now the number of these tandem repeats of a sequence is highly variable within a population. So suppose one individual is having 14 variable number tandem repeat, one individual is having 9 numbers of variable number tandem repeat, one is having 4 variable number tandem repeat. So the VNTR numbers differed in each of the individuals. So this became one of the keystones in the discovery of these particular things. So all the 3 individuals will be forming different fragments when their DNA fragment gel is run. So this became one of the key factor in the discovery of DNA fingerprinting. So over here I have taken an example from one of the forensic sites. So this DNA fingerprinting plays a very important role in the forensic sciences. So the forensic science samples are taken up. Suppose there is a case of some murder or something. So the DNA sample is taken up from the blood sample or from the hairs or the nails which are present at the forensic sites, and the DNA is then chopped up with the help of the restriction endonucleases. So the DNA is cut into various fragments, then it is run onto the gel. So there is a specific pattern of DNA fragments which can be found in the sample which is collected from the forensic sites. And suppose we have got 3 suspects which have been suspected, and we collect the DNA samples from each of the suspect or take the blood sample and extract the DNA from them, and subsequently we run the DNA fragments after their reaction with the restriction endonucleases. What happens that we get a characteristic fragment segments in these ones. So these things can be shown up along with the forensic site. So the person who shows a similar kind of pattern which is shown in the forensic site sample, we can easily say that yes, this person is responsible for the crime thing. Now the next particular thing came up was the polymerase chain reaction. So the polymerase chain reaction discovery was one of the instrumental thing in the biotechnology. So for this work, the scientist Kary Mullis was awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in the year 1993. So Kary Mullis was the major one in the invention of the polymerase chain reaction. Now, what exactly the polymerase chain reaction is? So polymerase chain reaction is nothing but it utilizes the DNA segment which is present, and it forms a number of copy of that particular DNA segment. So a number of copy of those DNA segments are produced from a single DNA template. So there are multiple steps which are there in the polymerase chain reaction. In the first step, there is denaturation which takes place. So the two of the DNA strands are separated. In the second step, it is the annealing step, in which the primers are attached to it, the forward and the reverse primers are attached. Then comes the extension thing, in which the nucleotides are added one after another to extending the DNA strand along with the primer which has got attached. So from a single template of DNA, a number of DNA fragments can be produced over a span of time. So over here, the polymerase chain reaction can take place to about 30 to 40 cycles. So we can just estimate from how much small quantity, how larger quantity of DNA fragments can be produced. So all these things revolutionize the biotechnology. Now, another major discovery which came up was the discovery of the hepatitis B vaccine. So hepatitis B vaccine, which was produced by the use of the recombinant DNA technology, and for these works, so they were award of Nobel Prize to Bulberg and Gadjurex. So these people were awarded for the discovery of new mechanism for the origin and dissemination of infectious diseases, especially the hepatitis B. So hepatitis B plays a very major role in the worldwide. So hepatitis B viruses kills the patients because of a number of complications. So what the scientists did is they isolated some of the core proteins from those viruses, and then they put those viruses protein into the recombinant DNA technology, produce the recombinant virus strains, and subsequently when they injected, these produced a high titer of lymphocytes, especially the B lymphocytes. So the B lymphocytes were produced. So we can see over here the hepatitis B viruses. Now, how exactly the hepatitis B vaccine was discovered? So a small fragment of DNA or RNA was taken up from the hepatitis B, which produces the antigens, hepatitis B antigens. It was incorporated into a plasmid DNA. So the plasmid DNA was cut with the help of the restriction into nucleases, and then this recombinant DNA was introduced into yeast cells. So in the yeast cells, these recombinant DNA, what they did is they produced a number of copy of hepatitis B antigens or the proteins. So when these proteins were extracted and sampled and purified and marketed as hepatitis B vaccine. So hepatitis B also played a very important role in the discovery of various other vaccine techniques. So these things were one of the things. Then came up the Human Genome Project. So Human Genome Project was one of the major thing which was launched in 1990 through the funding of US National Institute of Health and Department of Energy. There were international collaborators which were there, and the whole of the DNA from the human cells were sequenced. So the complete DNA sequence was done in just 15 years. So this is one of the first initial paper which came into the picture in the year February 2001, in which the first draft of the Human Genome Project was published. So we can see over here in this image over here, we can see a number of human genome sequences which are working simultaneously in the sequencing centers around the clock to sequence the human genome. Then came up another very important discovery which was discovered in the year 2014. This was the discovery of the human proteome. So all the human proteins have been coded now. So we know all the proteins which are produced by the various DNA segments present in the human. So a number of Indian laboratories were involved in the international collaboration, and they were instrumental in developing or decoding these human proteomes. So in the May 2014 in Nature, the first draft map of the human proteome was published. Now, if we see the overview of the workflow which is being done, so the human proteins were taken up from various organs of the body: spinal cord, cortex, retina, esophagus, pancreas, colon, ovary, testes, prostate, urinary bladder, kidney, adrenal gland, gallbladder, liver, heart, lungs. So the proteins were taken up. Subsequently, the protein extract was taken up, the SDS page was done, then the digestion was done, then the tandem mass spectroscopy was done, and the data analysis was done. So all these played a very important role in analyzing and characterizing what are the proteins produced at each of the organ level. So these things were done. Now let's come into the biological sciences in India and what are the various prospects or scopes which are available in India. So a person or a student who is studying biotechnology or life sciences has got a multiple fields of choices. So he or she can become a nutritionist, they can become a research scientist, zoologist, biomedical scientist, microbiology, genetic counselor, marine biotechnology, ecologist, biochemist, immunologist, food technologist, forensic scientist. So you name it, and he or she can become anything. So all these fields are interrelated to one another. So in this image, if we can see, the biotechnology frontier is increasing day by day. So biotechnology includes plant genome research, it includes the crop biotechnology, brain research is also there, new development of new vaccines takes place with the help of the biotechnology, cell sciences, immunology, molecular and diagnostic probes which are there, gene therapy is there, then the development of various bioproducts is there, bioinformatics is there, animal biotechnology is a part of biotechnology, then the environment related sciences also uses a number of biotechnology fields. Now, if we see some of the indigenous biotechnology products which have been produced by the laboratories across India, so there are various number of technology which has been developed, such as the leprosy immunomodulators which have been produced, leishmaniasis detection kits which have been produced, Western blotting kits for HIV has been produced in India. Then there are various hepatitis diagnostic kits which have been produced in India. So we can see over here a number of biotechnology tools which are specially based on ELISA, and the various recombinant DNA technology has been produced in various laboratories across India. Now, if we see the major institutes and universities who are conducting the research in biotechnology and life sciences, it includes All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Center for Biotechnology, Anna University. Then there are Bose Institute in Kolkata, CCMB Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, Hyderabad, Central Drug Research Institute, Lucknow. Then there are Delhi University labs who are working on various fields, Indian Institute of Chemical Biotechnology, Kolkata, ICGB, New Delhi. Then there is ISC, Indian Institute of Sciences, Bangalore, who are working, ISR, Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research at various locations, Kolkata, Pune, they are working. Then Indian Institute of Technologies, especially in Mumbai and Kanpur, they are working. Then in New Delhi, there is International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology who are working in biotechnology field. Jawaharlal Nehru University have got a Department of Life Sciences where they are working on the life sciences related fields. Then there are a number of institutes which includes National Center for Biological Sciences, Bangalore, National Brain Research Center who are working on the brain and cognitive sciences, Manesar. Then there is National Center for Cell Sciences, Pune. Then there is National Institute of Immunology, New Delhi. Then there is Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in Mumbai who are working on the biological sciences. So there are a number of autonomous institutes which are also there, which are also working on the fields of biotechnology and life sciences, which includes National Institute of Immunology, New Delhi. Then there is National Center for Cell Sciences, Pune. Then there is CDFD, Center for DNA Fingerprinting and Diagnostic, Hyderabad. NCPGR, National Center for Plant Genome Research. National Brain Research Center, New Delhi. Institute of Bioresources and Sustainable Development, Imphal. So apart from them, there are different other institutes also who are working. Another field of biotechnology is called as the intellectual property rights, which basically deals with the copyright, patenting things of the various products which are being produced or commercialized. So there are various courses or institutes or universities who are undergoing courses are there. So one of the course institutes include Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, who have got a School of Intellectual Property Law. Then there are various courses in IGNOU, Indira Gandhi National Open University. Then National Law School of India University, Bangalore also has got some courses. Cochin University has got some courses. Indian Law Institute, New Delhi has got some courses. National Law School of India University, Bangalore has got courses. Then the Campus Law Center, Delhi University has got number of intellectual property right courses. Now, if we come to another field of biotechnology and life sciences, which deals with the bioinformatics. So a bioinformatics, especially a field which using in silico, means the technology of computer sciences plays a very important role in bioinformatics. So all the data which are generated from the various field of molecular biology, genomics, proteomics, and the various information technology are then incorporated into these information technology field, and the various application databases and computational biology related data are generated. So there are various institutes and postgraduate courses of bioinformatics which are there in India in various universities. So if you just Google search, we will get a number of universities which are there who provides various masters and postgraduate and PhD level courses in bioinformatics. Now, if you see the map over here, this is the map which the DBT is showing, has shown, in which the programs of bioinformatics infrastructure have been developed across India. So if we can go to the DBT website, we can get a knowledge of what are the institutes and what are the courses which are available in bioinformatics. So now, if we see some of the institutes who are working on bioinformatics or computational biology or biotechnology, these includes Institute of Microbial Technology, Chandigarh, Indian Institute of Sciences, then there is Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, CCMB, Indian Institute of Chemical Biology, Kolkata, Indian Institute of Chemical Technology, Hyderabad, Central Drug Research Institute, Lucknow. So, and apart from this, there are various other fields such as the environmental biotechnology also. So there are various institutes who are working on these environmental sciences in India. So there is a Center for Environmental Sciences and Engineering in Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay. Then there is Center for Sciences and Environment, New Delhi is there. Then in ISC Bangalore, there is a Center for Ecological Sciences. In ISER Mohali, there is Earth and Environmental Sciences. Then in Bhopal, there is National Institute for Research in Environmental Health. Then there is a CSR laboratories. One of the laboratories is Indian Institute of Toxicology Research, Lucknow. Now, few of the institutes which are also working in the environmental sciences is Indian Agricultural Research Institute, New Delhi. Then there is National Environmental Engineering Research Institute, Delhi. Wildlife Institute of India, Dehradun, which is working. Indian Institute of Forest Management, Bhopal, is also working on environmental related issues. And Forest Research Institute, Dehradun. So these are some of the prominent institutes who are working in the environmental sciences. Now, another field which is related to biotechnology is called as the forensic sciences. So forensic sciences specially deals with these DNA fingerprintings and the various forensic or criminal or paternal or the other cases. So there are various institutes or universities who are working on these forensic sciences. So some of the institutes are shown over here. So there is Gujarat Forensic Sciences University, which is there. Center for DNA Fingerprinting and Diagnostics, which is there in Hyderabad. Then there is National Institute of Criminology and Forensic Science in Delhi. And apart from this, there are various universities like University of Madras, Kurukshetra University, University of Delhi, Sagar University, University of Madras, Kerala. They are also having a number of courses on forensic sciences. Then there is another course which is there, which is coming up nowadays, which is called as the hospital management courses in India. So these hospital management courses are basically in which a student is studies a administrative work as well as the hospital related work. So a student is basically coordinating with the doctors, nurses, administrative staff, the hospital management. So is knowing all the things in total. So there are various institutes which have got courses in hospital management. So there is Indian Institute of Health Management Research, which is there, IIHMR. There are a number of centers which are there. There is one center in Jaipur, Bangalore, Delhi and Kolkata. Then Faculty of Management Studies, Delhi Universities have got various courses on health management or hospital management. All India Institute of Medical Sciences have got many courses. Then Indian Institute of Management, especially IIM Ahmedabad, is having a number of courses on health management research. Then at the end, I will come up with another upcoming field which is called as the food technology. So in the food technology, one student gets to know about the food, what are the ingredients, how the food validifications are done, how the adulterations and everything are checked at the proper level. So all the food industries nowadays are recruiting food technologists in their company. So these food technologists, what they do is they time to time they check the quality and the quantity of the food. So the quality is pretty important. So there are a number of institutes working on food technology in India. The first one is the Central Food Technology Research Institute, Mysore. Then there are institutes in Sonipat, National Institute of Food Technology, Entrepreneurship and Management. Then there is Central Food Technology Research Institute, Mumbai. Then there is Indian Institute of Crop Processing Technology, Tamil Nadu, and the National Dairy Research Institute, Karnal. So these are the various fields which are there in the biotechnology. So with this note, I conclude my lecture. So in this part of the lecture, we discuss about the various discoveries, the prominent or the important discoveries in the field of life sciences and biotechnology, and what are the various fields available in biotechnology, and subsequently what are the institutes and universities which comes up with these courses in their undergraduate, postgraduate and above postgraduate, PhD and subsequent levels. So with this note, I come to end of my lecture. Thank you very much.
On that note, I would like to thank sir for this very enriching discussion, and thank you dear friends for watching our show. Stay tuned and keep watching. Thank you.